Hi, everyone. My name is Charlene Platon, CEO and co-founder of WellNurse, and welcome to our live stream WellNurse Spotlight today. We are so excited to have you all here, and we are really excited to introduce our guest speaker for today, Catie Harris. And Catie Harris is a PhD, MBA, and registered nurse, and she is also the Nursepreneur Mentor who has empowered thousands of nurses to monetize their knowledge and skills in business while inspiring them to change the way healthcare is perceived and delivered. Catie strives to undo the perception that nursing care is limited to the hospital setting, and through her intensive mentorship program, Catie shows nurses how their nursing knowledge can transcend the hospital system into a profitable business. Catie is an international speaker who has been featured in ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, and Huffington Post. She has also shared her innovative mentorship work on national and international podcasts and TV, including Be Efficient TV, Dubai One, and Copy Chief with Kevin Rogers. Catie is a serial nursepreneur and single mom living in Philadelphia with her son, Matthew. Thank you so much for joining us today, Catie.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you. I remember still when we met for the first time in San Francisco, and I can't believe that that was, over a year ago now. Isn't that crazy how time flies?
It is really crazy. And, COVID really put the kibosh on those meetups, but they were so much fun to meet people like you and everybody else that was in that San Francisco meeting.
Yes, I agree. And, that event was great. Just as Catie's referring to, we actually met over a Nursepreneur event that she had in the Bay Area. And it was one of the most inspiring events that I had actually gone to, before 2020. So really, thank you so much for that, Catie.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Catie, we also have our team on the line, so they will be here to screen some questions that come in live through the audience on our different platforms. And so, just for everyone in the audience, if you do have a question throughout this conversation, please feel free to post those questions on our different platforms. We're currently on LinkedIn, we're on Facebook and YouTube. So if you have questions, please put them in the chats, and we will be able to monitor it. And we'll try to get to all the questions, but if not, we'll just try to answer as many as possible. All right, so let's get started. And Catie, we would love to hear from you first and just learn a little bit more about your career in nursing. You've had a really interesting and unique career, and we just want to hear about how you got there and just a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I started nursing. Oh my gosh, I've been a nurse now for 20 some years, which is hard to say because I always felt like, you met those nurses that had been in nursing for 20 years and you're just like, oh, that'll never happen. And here it is. I'm that nurse. So I started out in neurocritical care basically, and just grew up with just working with neuro patients and my neurosurgeons, and really spent the better part of my 20 years with them. Went on to nurse practitioner school, and just was kept looking for something else. I love learning, love just that whole aspect of, I don't know something, I got to get to the top of this and really understand it. So school lent itself to me for that. So I did, oh my gosh, I've done 3 masters, an MBA, then, went on to do the PhD and lots of certificates. So got tons and tons of initials behind my name. But, none of it was really kind of giving me what I wanted, because ultimately I kept going back to the same hospital system and doing the same job, but wasn't really growing in that job because they, just didn't have that opportunity to expand the way that I wanted to. And so that's kind of where I kept thinking, all right, what else can I do? And I kept exploring these other avenues of what else can I do, and how can I do it my way? Because that was another one of the hurdles that I kept coming up against in the hospital, is once things seem to move way slower than I wanted to. Like I want to move. And, to get anything done, and rightfully so, you need committees and all these things. I don't function that way. So it felt like this huge constraint on me. So that's how I kind of started delving into, well, what else can I do that doesn't rely on anybody else? And that's when I came into entrepreneurship. At the same time, I had been hired by Walmart in their corporate headquarters to recruit nurse practitioners into the clinics that they were building down south in South Carolina, Georgia, Texas. And my role was really to meet other nurses, nurse practitioners, nurse leaders, that kind of stuff. And that really opened my eyes because I started meeting all of these amazing nurses who had their nurse practitioner, they didn't have their nurse practitioner, but they had really cool jobs, or they had created really cool jobs for themselves. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what have I been doing? Like, there isn't just one path for a nurse or a nurse practitioner, and you don't just have to stay in the hospital. There's so many other things. And what I realized was that all of these people, they went and did what it was that they wanted to do, whereas I was sitting there waiting for something to happen to me. And that was kind of the big difference. And that's where I took the shift and said, okay, the opportunity might not fall in my lap. I got to go out and find it and look for it. And that's what I did.
Right. Thank you so much, Catie. I love that. You mentioned a lot of great things there in this first question, and I think that this is really inspiring to nurses because these are things that they don't often hear, right? I mean, you mentioned earlier about the whole just trying to do different things and wanting to see what else is out there, and I really admire that. And I didn't even know about those different jobs with Walmart, and that's really awesome. And as a nurse practitioner myself, I mean, that's really cool to hear about these different avenues. And I do want to get back to what you mentioned about entrepreneurship because I know that that's now a really growing passion for a lot of nurses in the field today. And could you tell us a little bit more about that and how you came to find Nursepreneurs and what that looked like for you and how that got started?
Right. So I've had various jobs that I've created for myself in the past. So I've been a first assist in the OR, and I would outsource my first assisting skill set to various neurosurgeons and help them out, and had that business, and then would bring other nurses in under me as well. So had like these little side businesses, and so but the idea of helping other people with their businesses, I had been doing that on the side anyway. So I had friends that would, I used to love to like just brainstorm ideas with them and come up with this stuff, and I'd come out with this huge plan that they could do, and we would write this all out on a napkin and stuff, and then of course nothing would ever materialize. And that was one of the things I'm like, why does this stuff never materialize? Like, because we're all excited about starting this business and stuff. But yeah, so just building from there, what happened with Walmart was one of the things that they asked me to do was to recruit nurse practitioners. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll start a blog. And at the time, I had no idea how to start a blog. So I went online and was looking for ways to start a blog. And what I came across was this blog money making system, and I was like, I don't, how does somebody make a money from a blog? This is so foreign to me. Like it was beyond the pale. So I ended up purchasing this course, and they talked about memberships and how you could do all of these things, and teach people what you already know, and then sell something like this online. So that had really piqued my interest. And I started going to entrepreneur groups, and I would meet these entrepreneurs who would say, oh, I'm going to help so and so with this disease state, and I'm going to coach them or teach them all these things. And I thought, well, that's what nurses should be doing. Nurses should be health coaching. They should be helping people with their disease state or health condition, or just teaching the general public what they need to know about cancer and autoimmune diseases and all these different things that we have tens and 20,000 hours of experience and expertise in. We're the ones that need to be doing that. So that really kind of fueled my passion for it. Where are these nurses with all this expertise? What's happening to them? Where are they? And I need to round them up because we got a lot to do. So that was really where it kind of came from, and it stemmed from. And it's it wasn't that clear when I started what I was going to do, but that's what it's come to. In retrospect, that's what I was doing.
That's amazing. And that's such a, I feel like that's such a progressive mindset too, because, with nursing, I feel like I just heard of the term. I mean, I just heard the term nursepreneur from you, and that was really the first time or one of the first times that I heard of that concept of a nurse being an entrepreneur. And that's so interesting, right? That it's kind of like a little bit more recent of a shift. And why do you think that is? I mean, how can we empower nurses to really own that capability and to step outside of this box that nurses are typically placed into?
Yeah, and I'm just going to say that entrepreneurship is certainly a path, and a path out of like kind of a bigger issue that I think that we have as nurses, and I think it stems in. We talk about burnout a lot, and the nurses are burnt out, they're frustrated, and I had that as a nurse, right? So I remember, having so I have my 4 master's degrees and my PhD and blah, 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 all that kind of good stuff, right? But every day I'm still going to the neurosurgical unit and reporting to the intern. And this made me really mad. Like, it was making me mad, and I was suppressing this annoyance and anger, because that's just the way the hospital works. I have to report out to the intern, and then the intern, would turn around and say things to me like, well, we don't do that around here. And I'm like, you've been here for like 10 minutes. Don't tell me how we do things. I've been here for 20 years. So, kind of suppressing this just discontent, not really having an outlet for it, led to just an argument that I got into with my physician, and just had my attending physician, who I had known as a resident, which, so then you feel like you have this special relationship or whatever, and just really blew up one day. It just, like, everything just kind of came out at me. It blew up. I got in trouble. They sent me, I got suspended from work. I ended up in anger management classes, which was, to me, it's really funny now because I am the most subdued person. Like, it takes, you really have to work hard to get me upset. But so here I am, really just cursed out an attending, got sent home. And I'm thinking, I'm in anger management classes, and I thought, this is not what should be happening to you in your life. Like, you really have to look into what's going on. What is the problem? Why am I so angry? Why am I so mad? And, I would say at the time that I was burnt out because I didn't have the outlet. I just was trying to force myself to fit in the hospital setting and do the things that they wanted me to do. And it wasn't working. And I wasn't paying attention to that fact, that it wasn't working for me, that I couldn't be what it is that they wanted me to be. So one of the problems I had, though, was that I was afraid to, one, own my ownership. I didn't even, my expertise, it never occurred to me that I could have been an expert in neurocritical care and done all these things. And you think it would, because I have a PhD and it's kind of my job to go out and tell the world about, be the expert in the certain area. But I didn't know how to brand myself. So I would do things at random. I would do stroke stuff here, neurocritical stuff there, and APP stuff here. So nobody really knew kind of like what my specialty was, and that was kind of a big problem because I got passed over for lots of things, and that contributed to the dissatisfaction or the burnout that I was experiencing as well. So that's kind of where entrepreneurship has given me that path. It's a narrow path, and these are the things that you need to do. But even if you don't go down that route, for nurses, I think just having the confidence to own the expertise and the confidence to brand yourself and put yourself out there is really, really important. And, for me, just kind of circling back on your question, entrepreneurialism is the pathway that I help nurses to do that.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Catie. And you brought up a lot of really good points there because, I mean, first, I think one thing to bring up is the idea of autonomy in nursing and in healthcare too. I mean, it is really important when you get to a certain point that you have that autonomy, right? And you can make decisions. And I do think that is a point of frustration for a lot of nurses. I do see that, and I've seen it throughout every step of my nursing career and advanced practice career as well. And so when that comes to mind, the idea of entrepreneurship can seem really, like a viable option. And thank you for sharing your story too about your personal journey with burnout and what had been contributing to burnout, because it just kind of goes to show how wide the range is for causes of burnout. It could really be, it could be a lot of different things, not just one thing, which is why it's such a complicated, complex issue in healthcare. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. And I do think a lot of nurses who are listening right now, I'm sure that they could, that they resonate with that as well. And that's really inspiring. And now that you've been pursuing this journey and you've been pursuing your own business, how long have you been on that path now? And how has that journey been? What are, the ups, the downs? What have you been experiencing? And because I'd love to hear if you had like what resources you used and how you even got on that path, because that's something that's really difficult to do.
Yeah, it is difficult to do. And I started this back in 2016. So it's been about 5 years, 6 years, 6 years in June. And yeah, I mean, it again, it wasn't something that like happened overnight, right? I had so many issues to deal with in the beginning. So you would think it's pretty straightforward. You have an idea, you put it out there, and business itself is a pretty straightforward thing. The problem is that we get in the way of it. So I had these issues of like, oh, well, I can't put my face on my website. I can't tell anybody it's me. I can't, I was worried about selling things to people. I didn't, how is this going to reflect back on me? What will people say? All that kind of stuff. So, I'm going to say the first 2 years I spent just learning, a little bit too much learning and not enough implementing. And it took me a good year to put a webinar together finally, and to the point that there was just nothing else that I could do other than make a sale. So, I went ahead and offered the course that I had put together and through a webinar and sold some of those courses. So, I was really excited, but at the same time, just like petrified, right? So my first reaction to that was like, oh my gosh, I should give them their money back. That I don't deserve this, all those kind of emotions that you go through when somebody actually gives you money. It's paradoxically, it's a weird feeling because, I could give free advice all day, but someone pays me for it. I feel this burden, and so I've been through ups and downs, and that's part of my money story and trying to figure out like my relationship with money and understanding all of that aspects of it. But yeah, so it's been just this incredible up and down. And even, I sent an email to one of my partners yesterday, and I'm like, I'm being tortured from 20 different directions still, so like, just getting the ups and, I mean, you're always gonna have ups and downs, right? To me, there's no end. It's just the journey of what you're on and trying to navigate all the things that are thrown at you. And I'm better prepared now. And confidence has a lot to do with that, because the first 2 years were about finding my footing and finding confidence and just kind of owning an expertise. And now it's kind of like, I don't have those issues to the same extent anymore. And I can move forward with, how do I sell? How do I market? How do I brand what I'm doing so that it resonates with my audience?
Thank you for sharing, Catie. And it's so funny what you mentioned. It reminded me of a conversation that I heard from Tanya Salmon. She's a registered nurse and a tech entrepreneur. And one of the quotes she told us about entrepreneurship was, there are days when you feel like you're killing it, or days when you feel like it's killing you. So, and I thought
True.
that summarized entrepreneurship really well, because it is this roller coaster, and you do need the confidence. You do need, it is a journey that you have to go on, but I really appreciate you sharing your experiences with that. And do you, in terms of the selling and branding for nurses, I do know that nurses, I think just by nature, or just in terms of, even in their work as nurses, it could be hard to sell yourself, or even sell your expertise to others in the healthcare profession. How would you push nurses to do that and to get their brand and their expertise out there? Because I could see sometimes there's hesitancy for nurses to do that and to kind of go against what they've might feel natural. So any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so we always try to reframe the selling to talk to nurses about, okay, so when you discovered your business idea, like one of the things that we do is talk about what their skill set is and what they like to do and what they're really good at. And then from there on, it's like we focus on the audience, like who is the audience and who are we talking to? And then what is the problem that they have, right? So then the whole business becomes solving that problem. So when you think of it in terms of, when you think of selling in terms of how do I solve your problem, it's not really about selling. It's about how do I help this person? How can I get this person to the next level? And again, people have, just different relationships with money. Like, I personally, I feel weird if somebody's trying to help me for free. Like, I just want to give them money to help me. And other people feel that way a lot of times too. Like, you could go out and do some stuff for free, and you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You definitely should have some of that aspect in your business, but you can't help as many people as you want to help if you're only doing stuff one-on-one, or you're doing it for free, right? Or especially if you're doing it for free. So, how many people can we help solve a problem is what you're doing. And it's not selling, because when we think of selling, I think we think of just, sleazy people trying to get money out of us, and that's not the goal at all. When you're selling, what you're doing is saying, hey, I've got this great solution. Maybe it's not going to work for everybody, but if it works for you, I can change your life. And I don't want to work with people that don't have some sort of impact factor that they're going after, or just some sort of just really great idea just to sell people stuff so that you can make money. I don't want to work with those people. I want to work with people that want to change the world, change healthcare, change disease states, and then we can show you how to do it. And a big part of that is branding yourself so that people can know, like, and trust you, which is something we all know in marketing. But it's so true. Like, if I don't know who you are or what you do, I mean, you can't help me solve my problem. And so that's a big part of, we do something what I call the brand called You, which is where we help you get your name out there, get your message out there, and just let people know how you can help them. And then you're not selling, you're never selling, you're just telling people how you help. And then eventually they'll say, well, how much is this going to cost? And that's when the transactional piece happens. But it's never, to me, it's selling. It's persuasion, and just helping somebody to solve what it is that they want solved.
Great, thank you. I love that reframing of the message. It really is, it comes down to the core of, nurses wanting to help others. And with this business, how can you help others? And I think that really helps with that messaging, and with, pushing yourself to go out there and talk to other people. I think that's a really great way to see it. And I also wanted to circle back, and I know you mentioned you had different things that you learned, and different resources that you pursued to help you on your journey in entrepreneurship. And I know that you have an MBA, and I've heard questions come up a lot about MBAs. And if you are an entrepreneur, do you really need one, or do you not? Or do you have any thoughts about that, given your education with an MBA, or anything you wanted to share about having that or not?
Yeah, I mean, I would say about the MBA that it's definitely not needed. And in a lot of ways, the MBA, I've had to unlearn things from my MBA training, because to me, the MBA, it's training you to work in a corporate world, they'll teach you to write out a 5-year business plan. And I'm like, well, I don't even know if I'm going to be around in 5 months, let alone 5 years. I have no idea what a 5-year business plan looks like. So when you're first starting out, those principles of business that they teach in MBA school just are largely irrelevant, and they don't help. And there's very, very few schools of entrepreneurialism, which is why we learn a lot from marketers and online courses. I think there's a couple up in Michigan, or I'm sorry, Massachusetts, but yeah, there's that entrepreneurship. Just the principles of it just aren't really taught at all. And I've done a couple of videos talking about how nurses are actually trained, from the nursing process to be entrepreneurs, because we work on shoestring budgets. We work with, we're very resourceful. We know how to delegate. We know how to critically think, and those are really the skill sets that you need for entrepreneurialism. And then just the ability to manage money and put it where it belongs. And some of it belongs in your pocket, some of it belongs in reinvesting in the business, and some of it belongs in purchasing things that will help the business grow.
Right. Thank you so much, Catie. And Those are all really good considerations. I know that that is a pretty big topic, just like what education do I need? Do I really need to spend the extra money? It's a huge investment when you pursue these different routes. And I see that we have some questions from the audience, so I'll go ahead and bring Catie in. And Catie, do you mind reading one of our questions here from the audience?
Sure. Hi, Catie.
Hi, Catie.
So we have a question. This particular person is an entry-level RN/MSN working in clinical operations. Their experience is more operational with limited clinical bedside experience. In your personal opinion, do you think clinical bedside is necessary to succeed as a nurse entrepreneur or not?
No, I mean, your experience will help you in various categories. But to me, it's like, how long would you stay as an OR nurse before you transition to labor and delivery? Like, it's not going to help you. That skill set that you learn there is not going to help you in labor and delivery. What you're looking for when you go out as an entrepreneur is a group of people that you like to work with, and then finding out what their problem is. And, that I think if let's say you're working with trauma patients or you're a trauma clinical nurse, you see what their problems are, and when they come back into clinic or if they come back to visit you, or you hear stories about what it is that they have problems with on the outset. And maybe you work in, maybe you do some of the support groups and you hear, oh, I have trouble dating. Well, I mean, after a brain injury, or I have trouble with this or that, and you can start something along the lines of, let's do dating for brain injured patients. Just kind of making this up on the fly here, but that's something that you could do, that your clinical expertise led you to that problem, but isn't necessary to solve, if that makes sense. So, and again, I've met so many entrepreneurs that are 18, 20, and I would say that, they don't have the life experience or the clinical experience that a nurse of 20 years has, but certainly, they're able to solve problems for people. So I just think that we can do it 1,000 times better. That's my personal opinion anyway.
Great, thank you so much, Catie. That was a great answer, and I see that we have another question too. And Catie, do you want to ask this question from Dolores?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So any thoughts on how to build and launch while you're it's a great one, while you're still working full time? For example, how do I put my name out there when I'm working on my new business as a side hustle right now?
Yeah, that's a good one, because I always tell my nurses, do not quit your day job, because this is not the fast path. And I've had nurses come and say, how can I make money really fast? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me know when you find out, because this is a journey, and you definitely want to keep your full-time job. But getting your name out there, really comes back to what is it that you want to be known for, and then just being very strategic about branding yourself on that topic. And one of the things that I see a lot of us doing, and I've been guilty of this too, is being just too broad. I'm a wellness nurse, or I'm, this type of nurse or that type of nurse. I'm a neuro nurse. Like, that still isn't enough, right? So what is it that you specialize in that you want people to know about? And I had one student that did med spa, and she actually specialized in like lips, like making lips really plump and beautiful. And that's really, really, really specific, but it's so, if you want to get your lips done, you're going to her. So how is it that we can brand you? What is it that you want people to say, hey, that person, Dolores does this, or Dolores does that. Articulate what it is that you do and direct people to you, then you have a good brand. Another example is I have a student that does cannabis for kids, and who works with parents with kids who have autism or behavioral spectrum or behavioral disorders, and she counsels them through cannabis use and other things that she does as well. That's not the only thing she does, but I always remember her as the cannabis for kids person. Like, even if I can't remember her name, I'm like, oh, that girl, you need to talk to Vanessa, because she does cannabis with kids. That's how specialized you want to be, and not just cannabis, because a lot of people do cannabis consulting, but cannabis for kids specifically, you want Vanessa. And the other cannabis consultants, maybe they do cannabis for kids. I don't know, but they don't specialize that way. And if you can find some sort of specialty like that, once you're on social media and talking about that topic, that's how the brand builds. And it's not something that happens overnight, and it doesn't happen in 3 days. It's going to take you about 6 months to a year to really brand yourself well.
Great, thank you, Catie. Those are really great insights, and I do agree. When you're starting out, it might be in your best interest to keep your job as you're building, because it takes a lot of work, as you mentioned, to even find your brand and what you want to pursue. And on that note, how do you balance it all? It really is a lot of work on the side, figuring things out, and then trying to establish and grow what you're building. But how have you balanced it as you were taking off, and how do you balance it now?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm trying my hardest to balance it all, but it is hard, and you do get exhausted from burning the candle at both ends, so to speak. But it's also something that I love, so it's fun for me. One of the things that I started in 2020 itself was building up a team. So I had people to help me. And that was one of the things that I really kind of discovered when I was coaching, was that I just couldn't be everywhere that I wanted to be and get stuff done. So then I would start getting, angry emails. Well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you said you would do, and I thought, okay, this is going to fall apart if I don't get help. So I started bringing on team members to help me in various ways, and that had its own set of problems, because then, trying to communicate how you want things done and building a team, because you're dealing with a whole bunch of different personalities that come along with it. So that's been really important. But prior to that, it was really about, one of the things that I like to do is have 12-week goals. So in 12 weeks, you can do way more than you can if you say, let's say a New Year's resolution. So you say, this year I'm going to lose 20 pounds and write a book, right? It's never going to happen, right? That it's just not going to happen, because a year is too long. But if you want to have those goals in 12 weeks, you could map out exactly how it could or could not happen. And this is one of the things that I've done in my business. Like, okay, what is it that I need to do? I need to brand myself on Instagram and get 1,000 new followers. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And laying it out. So the big goal is get 1,000 followers on Instagram and lead them onto my email list. And then breaking it up into, all right, well, if I'm going to do this in 12 weeks, what are the milestones that I have to hit every week in order for this to happen? And when you do that, then you can say, okay, well, if I had to do this week, let me break it down into my calendar, and I need to be able to find an hour or two a day to be able to get this done to reach the goal, the end goal, which is to get 1,000 followers on Instagram. So that's how I do it. And it's one of those ways that I'm looking at my calendar sometimes, and I'm like, there's no way this is going to get done on this day, because I've got these meetings and those meetings and this and that. And that's when you start seeing, like, you do have a limited amount of time. Whereas with a year, you think you have all the time in the world, but all of a sudden you realize your day is finite. You got friends and family to deal with. I'm a single mom. I got to make dinner, do laundry, all this stuff that all these other things that I have to do in addition to. So I like to try and keep my list small. And your business will move much, much slower this way. But if you're consistent and persistent, and you stick to getting 2 or 3 things done in your business a day, and that's when you know you're finished for the day, as opposed to, I've got a list that's 6,000 items long that it's never going to get done, and you're like, oh, I'll do it sometime or whatever. Just getting a little bit done each day, letting the business grow at its own pace, especially if you're working full time, or if you have kids or any other responsibilities in your life.
That's really great advice. I know it's a really difficult question to answer, and that's something that I think is kind of a journey, something that you continue to work on. But I think that you brought up some really great points, Catie, and we have another question too from Chris Caulfield. So I'll bring in Jillian if you want to ask the question.
Sure. Hi, Catie.
Hi.
So this is from Chris. He says, hi, Catie. Do you have any recommendations for easy wins while trying to brand your startup? Some types of media are hard to come by.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. For me, some of the easier wins are to apply to be on podcast. And Chris, I mean, I've interviewed Chris before, and he's amazing. His products are amazing, and his just getting out and letting people hear the story. And even podcasts that have a really small following, it's still 50 more people, and that's where this process is slow and steady, because you're not going to call up Oprah presumably and get on the Oprah show. It doesn't exist anymore, but even if it did, something equivalent to it, right? And that you don't want that to be your first podcast anyway. But if you had the privilege of being in front of 20 people, even if there's one or two people in that audience that matters, that's all that is interested in what you're doing. That's what matters, right? So the easy wins for me are applying to be on a podcast, and it's simply just email the person who owns the podcast and say, hey, this is a story I'd like to talk about. And then other kind of things that we're working on now, even our Facebook business page, I'm looking, instead of having quotes or happy things on there, I've seen people use it as a storefront. Like, this is what's going on, this is how you get involved, and this is how you buy it. And to me, those websites are those Facebook pages are so like, yeah, just tell me. Like, I don't have the attention span to go through your 50-day email list and then discover what it is that you do. Just tell me what it is that you do, what problem you solve quickly, and let me buy something. And I've realized that I've made in the past, I've made my program so hard for people to find. Like, they're literally like emailing me, where can I find this? Like, tell me where I can find this. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm making this so hard. So simple wins is just having your offer out there, and a way to sign up for it or to pay for it or whatever that is. That's simple and easy to find. And again, the podcast absolutely is an easy way to get in front of an audience. You can certainly do press releases. I don't think they get as much traction for what you want to do, but they're easy to do. And if you need media logos, that's an easy win. I would also say, if you want to, if you're into blogging or you want to put something out there on blogs, using a site such as medium.com and posting your blog posts there, because they'll get traction and they'll get a lot more views than your website if nobody's really going to your website yet, especially when you're first starting out. You want traffic. You got to go to where the traffic is.
Right. I really like how you framed that answer into just emphasizing doing a little bit at a time, because it's so easy to get caught up in these big lofty goals. But if we don't make these small incremental steps, then the progress will be really hard to make. It really sets us up for failure if we, have our goal to be on the Oprah show like by next year, or interview Oprah, or have her interview us by next year. But yeah, just those goals, like getting 10 people to watch your podcast or listen to your podcast, and doing that, I think that really helps. And there's another question, Jillian, so I'll bring you back up to read this question. Oh, sorry, Jillian, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. So this question's from Dr. Tiffany Victor. She says, greetings, Catie. While this may seem like a fairly easy task, it can also be a daunting one. What platforms or methods work for you regarding staying organized?
Yeah, that one's actually tough for me too, because I'm an ideas person and I'm not terribly organized. It's a big problem for me. So in the past I've used Google Drive, and I have Google folders, and then I have so many Google Drives that I can't remember where anything is. So one of the things that my team did for me, and I kind of went kicking and screaming, was they set up a project management tool called Asana, and we use that quite a bit. We also use Slack as a way to communicate, because my team is actually all over the world, so it's just easier to use Slack channels to communicate. But those two, the cards in Asana have been very, very helpful. And now I'm able to organize. I have my own personal project file, and I can organize my cards, and I get to move them around, which is kind of fun, and it's a way to procrastinate sometimes when I'm trying to avoid doing things. But it's been very helpful visually for me to see the things that need to get done, the big projects that need to get done, and where they are in the space of things. Like, because before it was just kind of like, well, where are we with this project, or where are we with that project? And now I can see everything, and the team is able to like put notes in and what they're doing. But even if you don't have a team, even if it's just you, having something like Asana or Trello, I think it's another one that's really good, and they have free versions of all that kind of stuff, especially if you're a visual person, and I am a visual person. Having that type of layout is very helpful. The other thing that one of my team members introduced was the mind map, and I was like, the mind, it doesn't help me. But because I'm such a visual person, when they actually laid out the mind map for me, I was like, oh, wow, like, well, now I can see like this doesn't work, or this funnel doesn't work, or this, this is all disjointed here. So having a mind map, and there's certainly free mind map tools that are out there as well. But my default, my brain still wants to go back to Google Drive because it's easy. But like I said, it's a big black hole now of stuff in my Google Drive.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Catie. And as my team and I have been developing WellNurse, it is really, it's challenging to get organized and to find the best tool. I've used Asana before for different projects. It's really great in general. There's a lot of other new programs that are out there for helping to organize. Trello is great, like you said. Even Microsoft Teams has had some organizational features. So lots of really cool things out there, and I really appreciate your insights too, because I also could be an ideas person, and I'm also visual, and I don't know, my my board could be kind of crazy sometimes, but so I really like that you mentioned that. But there's a lot of different tools out there, and I think it's just a matter of trying which one, trying them and see which one works for you too.
Yeah. No, I have like software fatigue at this point, because they'll say, oh, you want to try this? You want to try? I'm like, no, I don't want to try anything new. Like, just whatever works and whatever is familiar to me now that's why I think I keep going back to Google Drive.
Mm-hmm. And someone asked in the chat earlier if this was going to be recorded. And yes, just to let everyone know, this is going to be recorded, and we will share this recording later. So thank you for asking. And I do want to switch the conversation back to self-care too, because during these wellness spotlights, we've been asking each of our guests about their journeys with self-care. And I know you shared a little bit too about your journey and experiencing burnout. And nowadays, how do you practice self-care, or how do you continue to practice self-care as a nurse and an entrepreneur?
Yeah, for me, I want to say it's on the realm of meditation, but I don't do meditation in the way that you would typically think of something. Sometimes I just like to sit and stare for long periods of time. And it's weird, right? Like, people are like, what are you doing? I'm nothing. I just need to sit here and not think about anything, or going for long walks and not doing anything, or going to somewhere that has nothing to do with the project that I have on hand, just to clear the mind and just have something else on my mind. So that is a big part of it. And because I work so much, like all the time, and it gets to the point where my son's like, mommy's on the computer, she's always on the computer, and it's kind of a joke, but at the same time, I'm like, this is not a funny joke, because my kid is growing up associating me on the computer all the time. So I need to do something about this. So carving out that space where, when he gets home from school, and it's really hard sometimes, like I get twitchy, like putting my computer away, but it's something that I have to do, just to spend at least 2 hours with my kid before I start making dinner, doing laundry, and all these other things. And it's important. But again, and it's also important to just have the downtime, because if you're go all the time, like I said, I'm an ideas person. Ideas don't come to me when I'm actively working on stuff. The ideas come to me when I'm sitting around, like, counting coconuts, right? And I'm like, oh, you know what, and then I take off from there, and that's a really important part. And it's hard to schedule that. It's like, okay, well, for 2 hours I'm going to stare at the wall or something, and it just never works out that way, because you don't have time. Like, nobody has time for that kind of stuff. So finding a way to turn off the computer, to shut off the TV, and just to kind of be is a big part of what I really have to force myself to do, because it's so easy to keep go, and that is the absolute recipe for burnout.
Right, and I feel like a lot of that is true with entrepreneurship, especially because there's a lot of work that goes into it. You could easily spend long days and nights working on growing your business and growing your product. And on that note, have you found any other? It sounds like just kind of dedicating time to to yourself and really being intentional about that has worked for you. And do you have any other suggestions for people pursuing their business, and if they are still working full time, how they might be able to prioritize themselves first?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's really hard, because when the pressure's on to get stuff done, it's hard to put yourself first. And especially as nurses, we have that kind of added on to our psyche, that doing something for yourself is selfish, and and that gets reinforced too. So there have been times where I am working a little bit extra just to get something done, and people will be like, well, you don't do that, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to stop working, and it just adds on to the pressure and the burden that you feel. So honestly, like, even if it's just having a cup of tea and journaling, or just taking time to just sit and be present and not worry about what happens tomorrow. Don't worry about what happens in an hour. What is happening, like, right now? And if you can do that for even small increments during the day, and just not worry about what happens later, what's happening right now, it does change a lot of your perspective, and it does give you that sense of, like, everything is okay right now. Right now, it's perfect. I'm not worried about what's going to happen. Right now, I'm with my son, and we're hanging out, we're having fun.
Yeah, that's true. And that sounds a lot like mindfulness too, just really being present in the moment and really cherishing what's in front of you and not thinking so much about, oh my gosh, I have this thing and I have this thing, which, I'm sure more than anyone, like how that can feel, just like worrying about all these different things in the future. But thank you so much for sharing that. I do feel that even for myself, that's really great advice, just taking things one step at a time, being really intentional, and just setting a small amount of time, even if it's 5 minutes, just to save for yourself and have that presence for yourself. And I also wanted to ask this question. With all that you know now, and with all your experience and the businesses that you have, the business that you've helped with, if you were to go back in time and to talk to your former self as a nursing student, what advice would you give to yourself? Is there anything that you would say to yourself then that you wish you knew now, or that you wish you knew then?
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess what I really wish I had done, or had thought of, or had been guided to doing, was what, I would say branding now. Saying branding to a nurse sounds so kind of foreign, like, oh, like movie stars do that. I don't do that. But, to be very intentional about the things that I was doing in neuro, because I could have done so many things. I could have gone down so many other paths and maybe had the same, satisfaction in doing various things. But, like, I feel like I was passed over for a lot of opportunities, because nobody really, I mean, I was a jack of all trades, and, it's just kind of like, oh, well, Catie can do it, but this person specializes in it, right? So I think just, really learning a specialty. And, I did do that later in my nurse practitioner career, where I really specialized in neurosurgery, and then specialized in OR. and then specialized in, like different aspects of the OR, and just kept niching down in that. So you don't have to start a business to do that. But then when you take, you take that specialty, all of a sudden it's kind of like, well, who are we going to ask to speak at this conference on the topic of neurosurgical procedures? And it's like, well, Catie, right? Like, that becomes obvious that you're going to do something like that. So, in that case, my LinkedIn would be like, neurocritical care or neurosurgical expert specializing in blah, blah, blah. Obviously it would have to be branded better than that. But just really kind of focusing on something specific. And, I've told my acute care nurse practitioner students as well, like, areas that aren't well developed, like acute care billing in the hospitals. You focus on something like that, you're going to become the go-to person in that space very quickly, because there's not a whole lot of people in there. And if you're writing about it and all your efforts lead towards, like, how do we bill as nurse practitioners in the hospital, people are going to ask you to come talk. You're going to develop some sort of methodology. I mean, you're solving the problem actively as it's occurring. And I think those are ways that as nurses, we need to really find something, because, and especially after all the nurses that I've spoken to, we have a very, very vast career of things that we've done. So I'll have nurses say, oh, I worked OB, I worked OR, I worked home care, I worked this, I worked that, just 15 different things. And then they'll say, what can I start a business in? And I'm like, oh my God, because there's no specialization whatsoever. And in nursing, we have that unique opportunity to try all these different things, but it also, makes us really, really, really broad. And when you go to specialize or be known for something, it's much, much harder.
Right, I agree, and that is interesting too. When you're pursuing nursing, there's so many different branches of things that you could get into. I mean, you really could make whatever you would like of your nursing career, and I think that it's really great to consider that when you're a nurse. Just keeping in mind, what are people asking you? Like, where do you see yourself going? Like, what is it that people are gravitating towards you for? And I think that those are the nuggets of information that will potentially inform your future, right? Your future career, the potential to create a business as well. And one interesting question that we would love to hear your insight is, is there any scenario or situation where you would recommend a nurse to not pursue a business? And if so, what would that be?
Yeah, so and I do get this from time to time, because there's certain nurses that want, I think they're looking for financial stability, and they're looking to entrepreneurialism for that. And so I always try and differentiate between entrepreneurialism and wealth building, because they're two completely separate things and they're two completely different journeys. So, entrepreneurialism is about making an impact and changing lives and helping people, whereas wealth building, maybe you want to buy stocks or real estate, or spend less or redo your finances, or whatever it is that you need to do to build wealth. And if that's your goal, if that's what you really want, and this comes down to, what do I really, really want in life? Is this, and it's a profound question that's, I don't think we ever really ask ourselves, because we all think money, 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 money. Where can I get more money? And it's just kind of like, well, all right, if you had all the money that you wanted, what would you do? And a lot of times the answer is like, well, I would just, sometimes I'm like, I just want to have a glass of wine and read my book. But I mean, how much money do I need to do that? Like, I don't need to pursue entrepreneurialism for that. But, differentiating between, do I just need more money for security so that I can feel safe and know that I'm protecting my family, versus, and maybe you want to buy some like long-term insurance or annuities, or what, I mean, it's a whole different pathway, as opposed to, do I want to devote the next couple of years to solving a problem for somebody else? So that's, I think, the difference that you have to make, because what we all see is that kind of dream of like, oh, I'm going to start a business and I'll make $1 million next week, and then I'll have all the money and I can do this wealth building thing. And I've never seen it happen that way, like never, ever. the people that do really, really well, really, really fast, it's because they've already have a business and they already are in that space. But to go from like 0 to 6 figures in a week or a month, like I've never seen it happen. So you have to be in for the long haul. You have to love what you're about to do. And you have to say, if I never get paid for this, would I be okay with it?
That's a really good question. If you did get all the money you wanted in the world, would you still, what would you do? I think that's a really important question. And it's like, would you be doing what you would like to set out in your business, or would you do something, drink your wine and read your book, or
I do want both. Let's
which
just
honestly sounds pretty good too. But yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's a big question too. It really makes you put things in perspective. So thank you for, I really like that a lot. Um, and in terms of nursing entrepreneurship too, have you seen a lot of the nurse-led businesses succeed, or have you, is there a way that you have been able to gauge the success of these nurse-led businesses? Because I know that I know that it's a growing number, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely a couple different camps. So the nurses that are convinced that they can do this move much more quickly than the nurses that have kind of they're dipping their toe in and saying, well, let's see if this is going to work, and I'm not really sure. And so I've had nurses move really fast, putting stuff together and getting the business out there and start making their sales early on. And then just yesterday I had a one-on-one call with one of my students who's been with me for almost a year now. That's what we were talking about. And I was like, okay, so we need to do your podcast. We need to put this lead magnet together. We need to do these 4 things. And I said, what, my feeling here is that, you're resistant to doing them, to putting yourself out there. And, she admitted, she's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So, it's kind of like pulling teeth. Like I can't force them to do what they need to do to get the business up and running. So there's a lot of mindset stuff that we need to deal with and work with. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not, though.
Oh no, yeah, I think that those are really good points, and I think it sounds like a lot of the success of the business really is dependent on the entrepreneur, and
Oh yeah.
what they are pursuing, how much work and thought they put into it. So I could definitely see how it could vary from nursepreneur to nursepreneur. And we're almost at time, which is, this is a really amazing conversation, and I can't believe it's already the end of the hour. But is there any last words or parting words of wisdom that you wanted to share with the nurses who are on the call, or who are listening right now? And anything else that you wanted to share about self-care, or just any thoughts in general?
Yeah, no, I would just say, if this is something that you really want to do, you get started. And one of the hardest parts I think about getting started is starting at square one, and you see everybody else looks like they're miles and miles ahead. But the truth is, if you take things little by little, step by step, don't make massive goals to, like I'm going to write my book next week. Use the 12-week goals to just kind of do something very like a big project for yourself that will move you into the direction of a business. But I would also say, like, you have to find the confidence and that unshakable self-belief that you can do it and that it's worth doing. And if you have that, it will work out for you, because you're not going to let a little barrier stop you from moving forward. You'll say, how do I get around this barrier? As opposed to, oh, there's a barrier, I'm just going to have to give up. And that's what entrepreneurialism is, because you'll get hit by barrier after barrier after barrier, and your job is to figure out how to get around it, over it, move it, whatever you need to do. And as long as you're persistent and consistent with that, you will be successful.
Great. Thank you so much, Catie. That was a great piece of advice to end with. And just wanted to share a comment. One of our guests in the audience said that they could see the ocean in your reflection. And I just noticed that too. And I'm like, wow, that's gold for me, for us as well. But thank you so much, Catie. This was a great conversation. We so appreciate having you on our guest spotlight today. And so thank you everyone for joining. We will continue to have our monthly spotlights, so please stay tuned and join us for next time. But thank you so much, everyone, and thank you, Catie.
Thanks.
Thank you. And oh, and sorry, Catie, where can everyone find you if they'd like to learn more about what you do?
They can go to nursepreneurs.com. And that's all my social media handles are all at Nursepreneurs.
All right, perfect. So everyone go ahead and follow Catie on nursepreneurs.com. And thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.